A clock can tell us that movement has taken place. It can mark the hour, divide it into minutes, and then into seconds, but it cannot originate one single moment of life. A calendar performs another kind of service. It arranges the days, records the months, gathers the years together, and then we say, "This is how old I am." Well, that is true as a record. It is not true as a cause. A birthday tells us where the body stands in chronology. It does not tell us what consciousness may accept today. It cannot measure the amount of love still possible, the usefulness that may yet appear, the understanding that may deepen, or the new direction life may take through us now. And yet we have done something rather strange. We have taken this silent instrument, this thing that merely keeps the account, and we have permitted it to pass judgment upon what has not yet occurred. Why should a record of elapsed time be allowed to decide what life may still express? The record has no mind. It has no intention. It describes what has happened. A cause gives direction to what is happening. So perhaps the calendar has never limited us at all. Perhaps the limitation begins with the conclusion we silently draw from the years it records. Suppose a person takes an old photograph from a drawer and looks at it for a little while. There is the familiar face, the stronger body, perhaps the house when it was full, the work when it demanded everything, the years when others were always calling, always asking, always depending upon them. And the future at that time seemed long. It seemed to stretch out before them almost without end. Now there may have been real happiness in those years. There may have been usefulness, achievement, love, responsibility, and a great deal of good. We do not need to deny any of it. Truth does not require us to belittle the past in order to free the present. But then a subtle change may take place. The person is no longer merely remembering. They begin comparing. They ask the present to prove its value by becoming exactly what the past once was. And because it cannot do this, they conclude that it must be less. In this way, the former self is brought forward as a witness, and the present self is placed on trial. The old photograph seems to say, "This was when life was good," though the photograph has said nothing at all. There is a difference between honoring experience and worshiping it. Memory can preserve wisdom, affection, and understanding, but it was never intended to become the final authority over possibility. A good that appeared once need not be the only form in which good can appear. Memory becomes restrictive only when it ceases to be an account of yesterday and begins to issue instructions to today. And then we hear an ordinary phrase. A person says, "at my age," and usually nothing more needs to be said, because hidden within those three words, there may be an entire conclusion. Now, part of the statement may be true. A certain number of years has passed. The body has changed. Circumstances are not what they once were. We should not argue with facts because we dislike them, but the fact is seldom left alone. It is followed by an interpretation. Opportunity, therefore, belongs to the young. Newness is no longer appropriate. The present must be smaller than the past. Identity has become fixed. Whatever was to be created should have been created earlier. There is not enough time to begin. Do you see what has happened? A record of experience has become a prophecy concerning experience not yet lived. This is what we mean by assumption. It is not merely a passing thought. It is an inwardly accepted position, the conclusion from which one thinks, the mental atmosphere through which every fact is interpreted. It is the private agreement we make about what life is now permitted to become, and this agreement, accepted in consciousness, is impressed upon the creative law. Everyone is assuming something. The question is not whether assumption is operating, but what is being assumed. Are we accepting that the creative period has ended, or that infinite life remains intelligent, responsive, and present now? The calendar has no power to answer this. It gains authority only when consciousness agrees to think from its record as though the record itself were a cause. And this brings us to another distinction. The body moves through chronology, society changes our roles, but mind still acts in the present. Now, let us keep these things separate, because confusion begins when we make them all one. The body passes through chronology. Society changes the place it gives us, but consciousness still remains capable of accepting a new premise. The body does change. Energy may not move with the same speed. Certain activities may require greater care, and some things once done easily may no longer be wise or possible in the same way. There is no spiritual wisdom in denying this. Wisdom cooperates with conditions. It does not surrender identity to them. Then society makes its own adjustments. A profession ends. Children establish homes of their own. The house becomes quieter. Public responsibility lessens. And the world may begin to expect less ambition, less curiosity, less creation from a person because a number has increased. But these are descriptions of role. They are not definitions of being. Life is not divided into one supply for youth and another, smaller supply for age. The form of expression may alter, but the presence expressing has not withdrawn. The intelligence that once worked through strength can now work through understanding, through judgment, through patience, through a quieter and perhaps a wiser use of power. The scripture speaks of being transformed by the renewing of the mind. It does not say that renewal belongs only to the young. It points to a law of present acceptance. Mind may receive a new direction now. We should not misunderstand this. Right thinking does not mean that every physical condition will return. It means that chronology shall remain a fact without becoming a spiritual verdict. And when physical youth is no longer the only measure of a good life, then we must ask a more serious question. What, after all, would make any years our best years? What then do we mean by the best years? Do we mean the years in which the body was strongest, the calendar seemed longest, the house was busiest, and the world called upon us most often? Perhaps those were good years. They may have contained achievement, affection, responsibility, and a deep sense of usefulness. But we should not confuse activity with fulfillment, nor importance with inner freedom. A person may be very busy and yet inwardly divided. One may receive admiration and still live in fear of disapproval. One may carry great responsibility and secretly believe that worth must always be proved. And so the years that appear largest from the outside are not always the years most fully lived. It may be that the best years are those in which consciousness is no longer compelled to perform for its right to be happy. Love becomes freer because it does not need to possess. Service becomes purer because it is no longer bargaining for praise. Creation arises, not because society demands another achievement, but because life still seeks expression. Joy is accepted without apology. Peace is no longer postponed until every person approves and every circumstance is settled. And wisdom, you see, is not merely a consolation offered for what the body has lost. Wisdom is a creative power. It selects more clearly. It gives without so much vanity. It knows what matters, and perhaps, for the first time, what does not. We may look again at the old photograph. The former self may indeed have had greater energy, but the present self may understand more truly what energy, love, work, and time are meant to serve. We do not require a younger form of life. We require a present form of life, consciously accepted. And this acceptance is not accidental. It is an inward movement, a method by which the calendar is removed from the place of causation. Now, this inward movement may be called the Ageless Mind Creation Method, but we should understand what is meant by ageless. It does not refer to the body. It does not ask us to imagine that time has not passed, nor to persuade ourselves that we possess the strength of another period. It refers to the creative activity of mind, which always acts at the point of present acceptance. Suppose a new possibility appears, and immediately an old verdict rises with it. That part of my life is over. There is too little time. Someone of my age does not begin this. The important thing has already happened. Now we need not fight the thought, and we need not be frightened by it. We may simply recognize it for what it is, an old entry in the record. It may be habit, it may be social suggestion, it may be memory repeating its former conclusion, but it is not the voice of infinite intelligence. Then quietly, we withdraw our agreement. We return to the fact that life is present now. Not former strength, not a promise of unlimited years. Present life. From this recognition, we begin to form what we may call a mental equivalent of the person we are willing to become under present conditions. Perhaps it is a person who contributes with wisdom, who welcomes mature companionship, who continues to learn, who gives time to a creative interest, who serves without strain, who permits joy without performing for it. This is not a picture of youth restored. It is an inward acceptance of life rightly expressed now. And the new possibility must become permissible to us. We must cease believing that good belongs naturally to others, but has somehow become inappropriate for us. We must consent to it inwardly. Then something practical follows. A decision is made, an invitation is accepted, a study begins, knowledge is offered, a neglected interest is given a place in the day. Even the language we use about ourselves begins to change. Of course, one may still hear the old verdict again. Perfection is not required, but we should not establish a new premise in the morning and spend the day restoring the former identity to authority. When this inner agreement becomes steady, today is no longer merely the sum of all the yesterdays. It begins to act as a cause. and the first evidence of that cause will appear in some present act that agrees with it. And so the inward acceptance must find some ordinary way to become visible. Otherwise, it remains only a pleasant idea, admired perhaps, but not yet lived. If one accepts that life is still creative, then one must become available to creation. Suppose a man has left his profession and says, "My useful years are finished." Well, the employment may have ended, but the experience has not ended. Judgment has not ended. Understanding has not ended. What he knows may now pass into guidance, into study, into service, into some quiet contribution that requires no title at all. Or suppose a woman lives in a house that has become still. She may call the stillness emptiness, and then she will treat the house as though nothing new could enter it. But the same rooms may receive a different purpose. A letter may be written there. A book may be opened. A friend may be welcomed. An interest long neglected may be given an hour in the day. The act need not be dramatic. One may accept an invitation, begin a class, offer practical help, rearrange a routine, return to unfinished work. The importance of the act is not that anyone applauds it. Its importance is that it agrees with the new premise. A small action may be the first visible evidence that an old identity is losing authority. We do not act in order to force life to respond. We act because consciousness and participation naturally belong together. The inward word seeks form in present and practical expression. And yet someone may say, "But my strength is not what it was, and the future does not seem as long." This is a reasonable question. We should consider it honestly. Now, one may say, "My body has changed," and of course this may be true. The body may require care it did not once require. Energy may be reduced. Certain activities may no longer be wise, and there may be grief, fatigue, or practical limitation that must be considered. We should not be careless here. Spiritual understanding does not ask anyone to deny a condition, neglect assistance, or blame themselves because the body has altered. A condition may deserve attention without being permitted to define the whole person. Limitation may change the form through which life is expressed. It may make that expression quieter, slower, more selective, perhaps more inward. But different does not necessarily mean diminished. The instrument may change, and still the intelligence using it remains present. Then someone says, "I do not have the amount of time I once had." This, too, is a fact worth considering. But the quantity of time does not alone determine the quality of life. A long future spent in postponement is not necessarily greater than a shorter period lived with clarity, affection, usefulness, and peace. No beginning can demand a guarantee of duration. The creative law acts where acceptance takes place, and acceptance takes place now. One meaningful year may contain more genuine living than many years spent waiting for permission. The present is not valuable because it promises endless time. It is valuable because it is the point at which life is available. We do not need enough time to reproduce the past. We need the willingness to permit a new quality of life to appear now. And so we come back again to the calendar, to the record, and to the question of what authority either one should possess. And now we return to the record. Its pages may contain the years, the birthdays, the work once done, the losses endured, the successes remembered, the changes of the body, and the identities through which we have passed. None of this need be erased. None of it need be denied. The past belongs to our experience, and from it may come wisdom, understanding, and compassion. But the record cannot contain an authoritative verdict concerning what consciousness must accept today. We asked why chronology appears to possess so much power. It possesses power only when we permit an account of what has been to become the source of what we now believe ourselves to be. So let the calendar return to its proper office. Let it measure, let it record, let it remind, but do not ask it to create. We do not need to recover youth. We do not need to reconstruct a former identity. We do not need to defeat the recorded past. We need only restore the present to its rightful place, the point at which mind gives direction and life receives form. The years may be entered faithfully upon the page, but the page has no power now to decide what life shall express through us today.